She was sent to kill a human, but he looked her in the eyes and said, "Do it." The moon station was quiet. Too quiet. The lights flickered as she moved through the dark hallway, silent as wind. Her boots made no sound. Her breath was calm. Vel was not nervous. She had done this before. She was a huntress, trained to kill without leaving a mark, without leaving a name. Her mission was simple: eliminate the human, not a soldier, not a leader, just a technician named Daniel Reese. That was strange, but she didn't ask questions. Huntresses never did. She reached his door. Room 217B. One press on the panel. It slid, open with a soft hiss. Inside, he sat at a small desk, back turned, reading something on a datapad. He didn't even look up. "Are you going to kill me now?" he asked. Sierra froze. He turned slowly. Calm eyes. No fear. No anger. Just a tired man with gentle hands and soft features. "I thought you'd come sooner," he said. She stepped inside. Quiet. Careful. Her fingers rested on the hilt of the dagger, at her belt. His eyes dropped to it, then back to hers. "If you're here to kill me," he said, "go ahead. Do it." Sierra blinked once. No target had ever spoken to her like that. No one ever invited death. She stepped forward. He didn't move. The room was still. Her hand tightened on the dagger. She could end it now. Fast. Clean. But she didn't move. Her breath caught. Why? He just looked at her. Not like a monster. Not like a ghost. Just like someone who didn't care about dying anymore. She slowly drew the dagger, lifted it, pointed it at his chest. He didn't flinch. He even leaned forward. So close now. She could feel his heat. "What's stopping you?" he whispered. Sierra opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her hand trembled. She had never hesitated. Not once. Not in a dozen kills. But now, she looked into his eyes and saw something else. Not fear. Not hate. Curiosity. Like he was trying to see who she really was, not what she was. And that made her feel something strange. Seen. She pulled the dagger back. Slowly. Gently. Then to her own shock, he reached out, not to hurt her, not to fight, just calm. And with slow fingers, he took the dagger from her belt, held it, studied it, then said, "You wanted to kill me with this, didn't you, Huntress?" She didn't answer. He placed the blade on the table, then stood, walked past her. To the window, the stars outside flickered beyond the thin glass. He said, "They sent you for a reason, but maybe it wasn't mine to die tonight." She watched him. Her legs still wouldn't move. Her mind screamed, "Finish the mission." But her heart felt something else. Finally, he turned to her again. Soft voice. No judgment. "You can come back tomorrow. Try again, but if you want, you can also come back just to talk." She stared, then backed out of the room. Door closed behind her. Her blade still sat on his table, and for the first time in her life, Sierra Vel didn't complete the kill. She stood in the hallway, hands shaking. Her mind raced, her breath short. She whispered to herself, "What just happened?" And far inside her chest, where her training had buried all emotion, something cracked. She had killed without mercy, but something about this human made her freeze. The next night, she returned. No dagger, no plan, just questions. Sierra Vel, Huntress of the Valari Empire, had never gone back to a target. But here she was, standing outside the same door, room 217B, with her heart thudding too loud in her ears. She could still feel the moment his hand took her weapon. Not to strike, not to fight, just to understand. It made her feel like she had stepped off a cliff, and now falling, she wanted to know why. The door slid open. Daniel Reese was still inside, still calm, still alive. He looked up from a steaming cup of something warm and earthy. "I didn't expect you back," he said. Sierra stepped in slowly. "You told me to return," she said. "I told you to choose." She didn't answer. He walked over and offered her the second cup. She didn't take it. She looked at him hard. "I've ended lives stronger than you," she said, with no doubt. "No fear," he nodded. "I believe you." "Then why are you still calm?" "Because maybe you're not here to kill me anymore." Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say to that. They sat across from each other in silence. She still didn't touch the drink. He didn't ask her anything, but she asked him, "Why didn't you fight back?" Daniel stirred his cup. "Because you weren't trying to hurt me." "Not really," she frowned. "How could you know that?" "I looked into your eyes, and I saw something trying to break free." Her fists clenched. "I don't want to feel anything," she said coldly. "I know," he replied. "That's what makes it real." She stood to leave. Too much, too fast. But as she stepped toward the door, he said something that made her freeze. Again. "Sierra, what were you before they made you a killer?" Her back stiffened. She didn't turn around. Her voice came quiet, almost broken. "I don't remember." Then she left. But her heart stayed behind. That night, she dreamed. Not of weapons. Not of orders. She dreamed of laughter, a child's, maybe her own. She dreamed of water, a river. She dreamed of freedom. When she woke, her hands were shaking. She whispered, "Why him?" But the stars had no answer. Elsewhere, far across the station, her commanding agent watched footage from the hidden drone she never saw. It recorded everything. The hesitation, the missing kill, the conversation. The Huntress had failed. A message was sent across the command net. "Unit Sierra Vel has broken protocol. Prepare disposal protocol. Send replacement." Meanwhile, Daniel placed the dagger back into a small cloth. He didn't throw it away. He didn't hide it. He just kept it on the table, waiting, not for danger, but for a decision. And in his heart, he hoped she wouldn't come back as a killer, but as someone trying to become something else. The council ordered her to finish the job. She chose to talk instead. The message came at midnight. It appeared on her wall like a ghost, red symbols glowing in the dark. "Mission incomplete. Final strike approved. Terminate target. No exceptions." Sierra stared at the words without blinking. They meant only one thing. She had one last chance to prove she was loyal, or be erased. She sat alone on the rooftop of the quiet station wing. Below her, lights blinked from transport shuttles and cargo lifts. Above her, the stars waited like silent judges. In her hand, she held her backup blade, sharp, cold, light as air, easy to use. She closed her fingers around it and didn't move. Her orders were clear, but her mind wasn't. She remembered the look in Daniel's eyes, calm, steady, not afraid. "What were you before they made you a killer?" That question echoed in her skull like a drumbeat. She didn't have the answer, but tonight, she needed to choose one. Daniel Reese sat at the same table again. No guards. No protection. Just 2 cups of tea. He didn't lock the door. He didn't run. And when it opened and Sierra stepped inside, he didn't flinch. She stood there, blade in hand, but not raised, just held. He looked at her, like always, like she wasn't dangerous, like she wasn't broken, like she was real. "Is this the night you kill me?" he asked. Her jaw clenched. "My orders say yes." He nodded once. "And what do you say?" She stared at him, then lowered the blade, placed it gently on the table between them and sat down. "I say I'm tired of being told who I am." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke again. "I was taken from my family at 6 years old. I was told I had efficient silence and obedient hands. That's what they looked for in a huntress. Daniel listened. She continued. They made me fight my closest friend in training. One of us had to pass. I won. That's when I stopped crying. He looked at her, but said nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only thing soft enough to hold a wound that deep. She picked up the dagger again, but not to threaten, to study. This was supposed to end your life. He smiled faintly, but instead, it started something else. Then she looked at him differently, not like a target, not even like a friend, but like someone who held a truth she didn't know how to speak. And she asked, "Why didn't you report me?" Daniel leaned back. "You came here to kill me. You left without doing it. That tells me everything I need to know." Sira frowned. "That I'm weak?" "No," he said. "That you're strong enough to question the only thing you were ever trained to obey." Suddenly her ears twitched, movement, her eyes narrowed. She stood up fast. "Someone's outside." Daniel stood too. "Your people?" She didn't answer. The lights in the hallway dimmed, then darkened. The air felt different. He stepped closer. "Should I hide?" "No," she said. She drew the dagger, but not toward him. "I'll protect you." "Why?" "Because tonight I made a choice." And as the door slid open and the silent footsteps approached, Sira stood between them and the human she had been sent to kill. She fought her own kind to protect the one she was meant to kill. The door slid open with a soft hiss, but the air that followed was cold, wrong, too still. Sira Vell knew the feeling. Another Huntress was here. She stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the hallway. Her dagger was in her hand now, raised, ready. But this time it wasn't for him. It was for them. A shadow moved. Then a figure stepped out, armor like hers, same markings, same sharp grace. Unit Leven 9, a Huntress from her own cycle. "Step aside, Sira," Leven said calmly. "Orders are final. You failed. I finish it." Sira didn't move. "He's not a threat." Leven tilted her head. "He's a human. That's enough. This one offered me peace." Levin's voice hardened. "That's not what we were made for." "I know," Sira said. "That's why I'm done being what they made." Without warning, Leven struck. Fast, like lightning. A blade flashed from her wrist. Sira parried, barely, catching it in time. Sparks flew, metal screamed. Daniel backed away as the two assassins danced in the narrow corridor, blade to blade, training against training, but only one of them was fighting to protect. Sira moved differently now, not with rage, not with duty, with purpose. She blocked, rolled, spun. Leven kicked her hard. Sira slammed into the wall, blood at her lip. Leven moved in for the kill, but Sira threw her own dagger just enough to distract, then tackled Leven to the floor. "Won't let you hurt him," Sira said through clenched teeth. Leven snarled. "You forgot who you are." Sira's eyes burned. "No." I finally remembered, and with one final move she slammed Levin's arm to the floor, breaking the blade clean off. Silence. Then footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but it was Daniel. He stared at her, stunned, breathing hard. You fought one of your own." "I did," she said softly. He stepped closer. "Why?" She dropped her weapon and said the one thing she never thought she would say out loud. "Because you're the first person who looked at me like I was more than a tool. You gave me back a name that wasn't just a number. You saw me." Leven groaned on the ground. She wasn't dead, but she wouldn't rise soon. Sira looked at Daniel. "We can't stay here. They'll send more. Where can we go?" She looked out the corridor window where the stars stretched into infinity and whispered, "Anywhere that lets me be me." They packed fast. Daniel grabbed only what mattered, a small bag, a data pad, and the dagger she left with him days ago. She clipped it back onto her belt, but now, not as a weapon, as memory, as proof of her choice. They left the station together in silence, No alarms, no chase, not yet. But the war that built her was coming, and this time, she would fight for herself, and for the human who showed her what it meant to choose. They hunted her across the stars. He refused to let her run alone. The stars passed like cold streaks across the shuttle window. Sierra sat near the back, legs pulled to her chest, hood low over her face. She didn't look like a huntress now, no armor, no blade in hand, but she still felt the weight of it all. The shame, the guilt, the endless eyes that would soon be chasing her. Across the cabin, Daniel watched her. He had never flown this far before, never left human-controlled space. But he didn't hesitate when she said, "We need to leave." He followed, not because he wanted to run, because he didn't want her to run alone. The transport docked on a quiet border moon called Vasha 3. No armies, no empires, just dust, wind, and silence. They stepped out into the cold. Daniel carried the pack. Sierra carried nothing. Her hands still felt strange, like they didn't know whether to hold a weapon or reach for something safe. They found an old worker shelter near the cliffs, broken walls, rusted roof, no guards. It was perfect, because here no one asked questions, and silence was enough. But silence doesn't last forever. 3 nights later, while Daniel was fixing the old power grid, Sierra stood at the ridge above the camp. Her eyes caught the distant flash in the sky, a familiar burn. Dropship, small, fast, Valari marked. Her heart sank. They had found her. She ran down to Daniel. "They're here," she said. He looked up. "How long?" "Maybe minutes." He didn't even blink. "Then let's move." She paused. "You're not leaving?" He straightened. "I didn't fly across half the stars to watch you go alone again." She stared at him. Her voice almost broke. "I was never supposed to have someone like you." "Then maybe your story just changed," he said softly. They ran through the cliffs. The wind screamed between the rocks. But Sierra's mind was quiet, focused, not on fear, on him. She kept looking back, checking on his steps. She had always moved alone. Now, she moved for 2. When the Valari trackers reached the camp, they found nothing but old tools and one message burned into the wall. "I'm not your weapon anymore." The leader of the squad read the words, then crushed the message with her boot. "Keep scanning," she ordered. "She won't run forever." In the caverns beyond the ridge, Sierra and Daniel paused to catch their breath. He wiped sweat from his face. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then, for the first time, reached out and touched his hand. No gloves, no fear, just her hand in his. "I don't know where this ends," she whispered. "I don't care," he replied. "As long as I'm beside you." She smiled, for real this time. Not like a soldier, not like a traitor, like a girl who finally let herself feel something human. She returned to the Empire alone, until he stepped into the fire beside her. Sierra stood at the edge of the shuttle platform, staring at the glowing gates of the Valari capital world. Behind those walls, the Huntress Council waited, the same ones who trained her, the same ones who ordered the kill, the same ones who now branded her a traitor. She could feel it in her bones, the danger. She might not walk out again. Still, she had to go back. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but for someone else. Her sister, Taylor, the next in line. The one being trained to replace her. If she didn't speak now, another girl would be turned into a blade, another soul stolen. She couldn't allow that, even if it cost her everything. She turned to Daniel. His eyes were tired, but steady. "You don't have to come with me," she said. "I know. This isn't your fight. It became mine the second you spared me." She shook her head. "They'll kill you." He stepped closer. "And they'll try to kill you too." She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped, because she knew the truth. He wasn't coming to save her. He was coming to stand beside her, even If it was the last thing he ever did. She placed a hand gently on his chest. I was ready to burn alone. He took her hand and said, "Then I'll burn too, just so you don't forget what warmth feels like." The council chamber was cold and tall. Sira walked through the center unarmed. Daniel followed, silent, steps behind her. Dozens of council members watched from the shadows above. "Sira Vel," a voice echoed, sharp and proud. "You were trained to obey. Instead, you ran." "I didn't run," she replied. "I woke up. You betrayed your purpose. I chose my own." They leaned forward now. "Then speak. What do you want before we erase your name?" Her voice didn't shake. "I want you to release my sister. Let her choose her path. Don't make her a ghost like you made me." Laughter echoed in the chamber. "She belongs to the Empire." Daniel stepped forward now, eyes fixed on the shadows. "Then your empire is built on stolen souls." Several voices shouted. Weapons were drawn. Guards marched forward. But Sira raised her hand. "You made me a killer, but this human made me something stronger." He looked at me without fear. He held my blade and gave it back. He gave me the choice to be alive. Daniel stepped beside her, not behind, not hidden, beside, and he said calmly, "You taught her to end lives. I reminded her how to protect one." Silence filled the chamber. No one moved. Then one elder, older, slower, sadder, stood, looked at Sira and said, "We forgot what a huntress was meant to be. You remembered." And he sat back down. No orders were given. No one spoke again. But the guards stepped aside, and the path behind them opened. Outside, beneath the starless sky, Sira finally let out a breath. Daniel was still beside her, alive, unbroken. She turned to him. "What now?" He smiled. "Now we walk away, not as prey, not as fugitives, but as ourselves." She took his hand. And this time, she held it first. She was once the blade of the Empire. Now she walks beside the one she couldn't kill. The hunt was over, not because they surrendered, but because they had nothing left to run from. Sira Vel, once the sharpest huntress in the Empire, walked the edge of a cliffside path on the farming world of Narosva. The wind was soft here, the soil warm, the people quiet. There were no blades drawn, no orders whispered, no eyes watching her back, only Daniel Reese, walking beside her, his hand in hers. Their steps matched, like they always had, even when everything else tried to pull them apart. In the village below, a child ran past with a wooden stick and a scarf tied like a cape. He looked up at Sira and waved. "Miss Sira, are you going to tell a story tonight?" She smiled, a real smile. "Yes," she said, "but it's not about war." He grinned. "Good. I like peace better." Daniel laughed quietly. "Same here." Each week, Sira taught the children of ex-soldiers and ex-smugglers how to move without fear, not to kill, to protect, to stand firm, to breathe, to choose. And each time a child asked, "What were you before this?" she'd answer, "I was someone who thought I couldn't change." And then she'd add, "But then I met someone who saw something in me I never saw in myself." One evening, she sat with Daniel under a tree that overlooked the valley. The sun dipped low, touching his skin with orange and gold. She looked at him, at the man who never raised a hand in anger, who stood for her when no one else did, who stepped into the fire, not to fight but to stay. "You had every reason to leave me," she said. "I had one reason to stay," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "What was it?" "You." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was once the Empire's blade. Now, I'm just a woman with scars, holding the hand of the man she couldn't kill." He smiled. "And I'm just the man who taught a killer how to heal." They stayed there as the sky turned dark and the stars slowly returned. No more running. No more orders. Just peace. And the story of a girl who could have ended a life, but chose instead to begin one.